Hello and welcome to Bits of Java. Let's talk about a common array algorithm, finding the mode. So finding the mode of a number, that's looking into an array or a list and seeing which number appears most frequently. Now, if there are actually multiple numbers that appear most frequently, then you can have multiple modes. This algorithm is not going to account for that. And also, if you have no number that appears most frequently, like all of them just appear once, then there's also considered to be no mode. Again, not covering that section as well. What this one will do is, if there is a mode, it will find it. And if there's more than one mode, it'll find one of them. Okay, so now we got that out of the way. Let's see if we can just figure out how to do this on paper first, because that's the key behind problem solving in computer science, is to actually figure out how you would actually solve the problem. So before I even write any code, this is stuff I wrote out. So let's take a look at it. So with this list right here, I can just look and see that 5 appears the most, just visually. But if there were hundreds of numbers, I wouldn't be able to do that. So we have to think about how would we do this if we had such a large list we couldn't actually keep track of everything in our head very easily. So what would I have to keep track of? I'd have to keep track of, like, I'll start with the first number here, so 1. And then I'll see how many times the number 1 appears in the list. And I should write that down. So like right now, 1 is my target. So if I start with 1 and I loop the list, I'll find, okay, I got a 1 here, and that's it. So right now, I've got a count of 2. So that's the highest frequency that I've seen, is 2. So right now, my current mode, I think, is 1, and it's appeared 2 times. Okay, but that only looks for matches for the first number. So for this first number, I did loop through the whole list, or the array here. Now I have to go on to the rest of the numbers. So for the rest of the numbers, okay, now I'm on the 5. Let's look at that one next. Now I can loop through this array fully again and see, well, how many 5s are there in this whole array. So as I'm looping through this array now, I'll see, okay, it's not here. I've got the target's there already. I've got a match, and a third match. So I've got 4 total matches. So what do? Well, I'll look back and I say, well, I wrote down that 2 was my previous maximum frequency. So now 4 is my maximum frequency, so I have a new mode. It's not 1 anymore, it's going to be 5. So I'm going to write down that my mode is 5, and it has a maximum frequency of 4. So I'm going to repeat this process for the rest of the array now. So I have to kind of go through, like, for each of these numbers. For the 6, I'm going to loop through the entire list and see how many 6s there are. For the 3, I'll loop through and see how many 3s there are. For this 5, it's going to be a little bit redundant. This is not the most efficient algorithm, but this will actually get it done. I'm going to count the 5s again and see, oh, there's 4 again. And since that's not more than 4, it's not going to change anything. It'll still stay 5. I'll count the 1s again. I'll count the 3 again. And I'll just do it for every single one. So this process is making me think like I have to have 2 loops, because one loop is up to go through each potential mode one at a time, but for every potential mode, I have to look through the whole list and see how many matches there are. Okay, so then let's look at the code. So here, again, I'm presuming that there is a mode, and we're not handling a situation where there's no mode, so I'm going to assume that the mode is the first number, and that right now my maximum frequency is 1, because that first item already exists. So here, I'm going to loop through my potential targets. So this is that first loop. I want to count how many 1s, how many 5s, how many 6s, how many 3s, how many 5s, etc. But then for each of those numbers, I have to say, okay, well, let's look at the frequency. Okay, I haven't seen any matches yet, so I'm going to say 0. And my target is whatever that current target index is, whatever value is there. So in the first time through, the target's a 1, but it'll go on from there. So now I loop through the whole list again, the whole array again, and if I have a match, I'll increase my frequency. So I'm just counting matches here. And now, after I'm done counting all the matches, let's see, like, do I actually have a new winner? So if my frequency is more than my max frequency, then my mode is, I've got a new mode. So my mode is whatever the target was, and my maximum frequency is whatever the frequency we counted here was. and then it loops again and goes on to the next number, etc. So if we see this in action, let me copy one of these things. I'll copy this, and then I will run the mode here. It says it returns a 5, and if we look at the printf, the debugging printf, the mode is 5, the frequency is 4. That is correct. Now, there is a more straightforward approach we can do, but it only works if this list is pre-sorted. So let's scroll down here. So if this were actually sorted, we'd have all the 1s, then all the 3s, then all the 4s, all the 5s, all the 6s, they'll all be next to each other. So I wouldn't need to loop through this list a whole bunch of times. I could just like say, okay, if I count how many consecutive numbers I have in a row, then if whatever has the most consecutive numbers in a row, that's the mode. So right now I've got 2 1s. That's the mode. 3s, there's 2 3s. Well, that's the same, so we'll just say 1 is still it. 4, there's 1 4. It's not the new mode. 5, there's 4 5s. So that takes over being the winner. And there's only 1 6, so the answer would be there are 4 5s in a row. So that is the mode with a frequency of 4. So here's how I would code that. So again, I'll assume that each item in the array occurs only at least one time. So we're assuming that there's not an empty list here, not an empty array. So the max frequency is 1. The mode, we're assuming the mode is going to be that first number. So we're just kind of making some assumptions at first. It's kind of like when we did the max value algorithm, we assumed the first one was the max, and we just changed it from there if we found a better candidate. And then now I'm going to have my variables that change. So these are my maximums, my actual answers, and these will be my test subjects. So frequency we want to start with, and then the candidate will be the first value. So since I'm starting the frequency at 1, and I'm setting the candidate's the first value, I already know that this one exists. So I'm not starting at 0 here. I'm starting at the next one. So I'm basically saying if this candidate matches the current value. So right now the candidate was the first value, and it does match the array at I, which is 1. So my frequency increases. And now I'm going to check right away. Do I have more in a row than my maximum? And if I do, then my maximum frequency is now whatever the current frequency is, and the mode is the new candidate, or the mode is the candidate that we had. Now when we get to a, we don't do the else, we go to the next value, it's a 2. So we have a 3 as our value at Ri. So here the candidate is not equal to the value at I, because 1 is not 3. So now go to the else. Well, now my new candidate has to be 3 because I'm past all the 1s. And now I have to reset my frequency. Now I found that 1 3. And then I keep going forward from there. And let's watch it run. If I go ahead and paste in, now if I paste in a list that's unsorted like this, watch what happens. I hit OK. It tells me the mode is 1 and that frequency was 1. Because in this list here, there was nothing that appeared consecutively more than once. So it just assumed that the first one was there. So that's the key, is this only works on a sorted list. So if I try with a sorted list, and I do it, pass this in here, now it said correctly the mode was 5 and that the frequency was 4. Now sorting is something that we will cover in another video, and on the AP exam you're not expected to know how to actually write a sorting algorithm, but the first method of finding the mode here, that would be the way to go on an AP exam. And this idea of checking one value against all the rest of the array, and then checking the second value against all the rest of the array and the third one, etc., that's come up a few times in the past. All right, thanks for watching.